Hello, Chris. Are you with us? Looks like your video is frozen.
I'm trying to fix that one sec.
Okay. Well, I guess hello everybody. We're used to living in two worlds as Kabbalists, but we're now juggling multiple worlds. First of all, it's hard to, especially with Chris and Asaf here, living in Israel in the middle of the sparks of World War III are flying everywhere. It's almost embarrassing to have these conversations weekly and to be talking about anything else going on in the world except that. And, just going straight to the heart of it. But hopefully, in our attempt to have this conversation, we're trying to do here is talk about what's going on in the world and through what's going on in the world to understand where we are, what forces are acting on us, and what we can do about it as humanity goes through this process, this transition, this metamorphosis, this emergence that we're going through. We wanted to talk today about this giant storm called Milton. I don't think it, guys, will be possible to get away from also talking about the situation, the heating up of war in the world, but we should talk about this hurricane. Chris, you with us? Are you still okay? Yeah, I couldn't tell if you're frozen. Um, this hurricane. So, welcome to the Great Transition, where three students of the authentic wisdom of the Kabbalah, students of the Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lightman, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lightman, look at what's going on in the world through the lens of the wisdom of Kabbalah to see behind the veil. Hurricane Milton is in the process of hitting Florida over the last 2 days. Last day, the winds there are getting up over 200 miles an hour. The
Hmm.
sustained winds are almost 200
Wow.
miles an hour. Like the gusts are over 200, but it's
Wait,
sustained
can
winds.
you please educate me on what's the status right now? Like, is it not? It's not over, or the most of it is over? Over, I mean, in terms of past
I guess
the
it
shore.
depends on where you are. Let me share this.
When it goes through it, whenever it starts hitting land, it kind of like starts slowing down a little bit, but
Chris,
then
while
it
you're
Hmm.
kind of
talking, I'm going to share
hovers
my screen.
over. Yeah, it hovers over the landmass, so it still like loses speed,
Yeah,
but
we
it's
see
just doing
that.
damage as it goes.
We see what you're
I
showing.
don't know if it's clear like 200-mile-an-hour winds until you see it. I had a video, but I can't show it now. My computer's doing something weird. Basically, it was just a video of, it's crazy. It was a video of someone filming inside their house, and it's almost like they could see that the water was
Ah,
coming,
Seth
and
could
almost like
show
the
it if
water
you send it.
bust through.
I can't show it from here.
Ah, okay.
But basically, there's just
Huh.
it's complete destruction. It's like a nuclear warhead went off. I mean, it's unbelievable how much damage just wind and water. It seems almost innocent, right? Because we're used to talking about bombs and explosions, and that can be destructive, and how much human suffering that causes. But this
Hmm.
just like millions and millions of people at a time just takes them out of the game. Like no water, no electricity. I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, already of people who have died. I mean, that just tells you. I mean, if you thought you could survive the storm, I mean, even that was that it wasn't the governor. I don't know who it was. Some official lady in some public office was mentioning how if you decide to stay in one of these evacuated zones, that you will die.
Hmm.
She said it straight like that, and I guess she wasn't wrong because they're talking about seeing bodies in trees that have been just swept up, or water takes them up that high, then the water recedes and they stay up there. Recovery
So,
is a
but this is
huge,
not.
huge
I didn't
problem.
see this on the headline, any headlines yet. But maybe I didn't look too much in the last few hours. So maybe that
That was even talking about
or
the previous hurricane, Helena, or what was the previous one that just came through a couple weeks ago.
hmm.
So they got hit. They got
Yeah,
hit
like
twice.
last week.
All of the debris that one washed away and messed up everything, that became just projectiles for this Milton that came through now. It's
Hmm.
terrible, terribly destructive.
All right. So every year, Florida has, yeah, and Dewey is saying, have you seen what happened in Carolina from the previous storm, which was last week, the one you're talking about? Also
Hmm.
horrible. So every year, Florida has at least one hurricane and sometimes multiple that hit it.
Mm-hmm.
And every year, these hurricanes do several billion dollars of damage. Like sometimes 50 billion. This one will probably be more than 50 billion. So like either insurance companies are going to seriously increase their premiums, or I wouldn't be surprised if insurance companies just stop insuring people altogether. Um, and it's interesting that during COVID, people flocked to Florida.
Uh-huh.
It's so easy. People are manipulated so easily, not in a
Mm-hmm.
negative way. Just, it's the real estate's cheap. You can be outside. Why do I need to be in a city? Go there.
So
Right?
basically, the
Like just
statistics are saying do not live here. in, there are certain areas where you shouldn't
everybody's
rely
hedging.
on
Everybody's
living.
hedging.
Okay.
Um, so
Okay.
we talked about it last week. Like, why do humans keep building homes in the path of hurricanes if we know what routes
Even now,
hurricanes
That's
people
hit?
that's
are
that's what I
exclaiming.
was
They're
what
saying,
I was
"I'm
at
done with
saying
Florida."
basically.
They're saying I'm done. I'm seeing a lot of
So
people say that
I don't
already.
know. They're done until the real estate prices go down, and isn't a big one for a
And
while, and you can get beachfront property for half the price of what you're paying in New York, and then you go. Well, what
Mm-hmm.
this does is it doesn't take away from the destruction, and the suffering,
hmm
but we also don't need. There's no mitzvah to suffer. So, like, let's just understand the system that we live in. So, what I want out of this is that
Mm-hmm.
we'll open up a conversation today about the closed system that we live in, the closed system of nature. All the weather, every person, all the animals, everyone is like a gear in a watch. So, like a squirrel is maybe not as important of a gear. Maybe you person listening are a more important gear. But if you look inside of a watch and you see all those gears moving and everything, it's like we all live in this analog machine, and every gear is connected to at least a few other gears, and nothing is turning independently.
Yeah.
Everything is affecting
Yeah.
everyone else. So what we can do and what it would be really helpful to do as humanity, regardless of whether you're on the side of Kamala or Trump, or whether you're on the side of Hezbollah or IDF, like we don't even need to talk about that stuff. When they talk about the elections here, they bring up like abortion or something like that, which totally separates
Mm-hmm.
people to this side or that side. But probably like 80% of stuff those people could get along on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got along and built up that 80%, we would much easier be able to solve the other 20%. So,
Oh,
regard
I would even say even the things that you think are the most controversial, they are also that controversial because they're being made to be extremely divisive and controversial. Meaning, politics, just by the way it works, the way that the dynamic of the system works, it needs these contention points, these controversies, these division points in order for one to fight the other. In order for you can't have a situation where every party agrees with every other party and every candidate agrees with every other candidate. You need people to be divided to a certain extent. Just inherent into the system of
That's my word.
politics itself. So I'm not saying that people don't have different opinions. Of course, and abortion is one of those issues where it also, it goes into like people's religious beliefs versus people's like secular views and things like that. Of course, but if you take a divisive topic and you could approach it in a way that, okay, let's use this as a way to get to know each other, understand each other, see what is a way for us to agree. Or if you use that as another tool to further divide and further escalate the social polarization, then that's what you get. So I'm saying it's also even the things we horribly disagree about, you know, it depends on how you approach it.
And it's hard for people. It's hard for people. You know, I don't know. You can say Republican, Democrat, but you definitely see it here in Israel, just as bad, if not worse. Where it's hard for a person to, I don't know. It's like you can you peel yourself away from your identity and move to another identity for the good of, you know, the country. It's
Let
hard for, you know, a person to like agree that I don't know what I was wrong, right? I don't know if wrong is the right way of saying it, but changing your opinion, it's kind of, you know.
Chris, even more than that, actually, maybe you don't have to, right? Also, because maybe we won't get Hezbollah and the IDF to say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe there will remain differences, but, right? So, like you're saying, it forces me to change, and maybe I'm not into that. But what if we can leave those differences for a minute and at least just find, like, we all live on I can't tell if you're hearing me. I can't. You with me?
Me?
Yeah.
Am I frozen
No,
again?
no, we both hear you. We hear you well.
Okay.
Ah,
Okay.
Chris looked frozen.
It looks disinterested.
I'm telling you, my something's going on over here, and I don't want to restart. Maybe I should.
Oh, okay.
No, right now it looks like it looks fine. Yeah.
It looks
Okay.
fine. I just felt like I lost your attention.
No,
I'm
honey.
fighting against your
Right here.
computer. Okay. So you brought up you brought up something serious, but I really thought about this in preparation for our talk today that, you know, what if you have these points of view that are very separate? But let's say that will remain even. What can, like, let's go back to the hurricane, because this isn't Hezbollah or IDF or Trump or Kamala. Like, we live on Earth, and that's why the storm is such a good example for us today. The Earth rotates at a certain speed in a certain direction. So, for example, if you're in the northern hemisphere, hurricanes rotate counterclockwise. That's what they do. If you're in the southern hemisphere, hurricanes rotate clockwise because of the way that the earth spins. Okay? Like, this doesn't matter if you're a Kamala guy or a Trump guy. It doesn't matter if you're a Hezbollah guy
Yeah.
or an IDF guy. And this is where we can start, like, with really fundamental things that go beyond our higher level opinions about things. Like, what else do we have in common?
Yeah.
If you live closer to the equator, it's hotter. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter if you're yellow or you're red or you're white or you're black. If you live closer to the equator, it's hotter than if you're further from the equator. Okay?
Yeah.
Also, if you took a cup of water and poured sugar into it and started spinning it, and the sugar or salt starts to be absorbed by the water, at a certain point, that water becomes saturated. What does that mean? It means the water will absorb the sugar, but if you keep pouring sugar in and keep spinning it, at a certain point, the water will. Do you guys ever drink that, like, Lipton iced tea mix? Chris, you did. You grew up in the States. Like, at remember, like, at the bottom, the, like, layer of sugar.
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
really.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you pour sugar into water and spin it,
Kool-Aid, maybe.
it'll absorb into the water until the water becomes saturated, reaches a point that it can't absorb anymore, and then the sugar will just fall to or salt will just fall to the bottom. The
Yeah,
water
super
can't.
saturation.
Yeah. What is it?
Super saturation. When it
The
can't
water
absorb
becomes
anymore.
saturated. So warmer air can hold more moisture. Colder air can hold less moisture. This doesn't matter what your opinions are. You could be a Trump guy holding a glass of water, or a Hezbollah guy, or a Kamala guy, or an IDF guy, or it doesn't matter. The water holds what it holds. The air holds what it holds, depending on the temperature. The point of these few examples is that we live in a system of fixed laws.
Yeah.
And we need to understand most people are acting all their life like, I'm just living my life in these damn storms. Or I'm just living my life and this damn problem keeps coming. Or I'm just living my life and that's how everyone is going through their lives. Like, all of these things are just happening to them without any understanding of like why things are happening or where they're coming from or even the predictability of them. If you're a woman and and you have a menstrual cycle, like just start writing it down every day. Just start writing down your cycle and start writing down your mood. For men, there's not as much of a physical. You guys look shocked that I brought this up. If you're a man, there's not as much of a physical result to kind of track, but you'll do it for a year, do it for a few years, and then nobody needs to, and then share it actually with your, maybe your spouse or your partner and start to understand like at this time, I need more quiet and I need like this. And at this time, like I want to go out and do this. Like this time of the month, I want that. These are not, we shouldn't treat every single
Yeah.
day like
Okay,
it's
but
just the
there are,
same day. And
but okay. So you make a really good point in that, and let me put it into some Kabbalistic words here, right? So on the
thank you.
still vegetative and animate level, there are laws that are undeniably rigid to our eyes. We can see that the Earth rotates. We can see that that gravity works a certain way. We can see that biology works a certain way. It's hard to not agree on that, right? But on the human level, that's where the question marks
But
arise
before you get to human
everywhere.
level,
Okay.
hold on, before you get to human level, what you're saying makes sense. But if you look at the life of 99% of people, we don't act like that though. We don't act like we act like gravity is real for the most part, but most other things we don't. You're saying like, well, those things are fixed. And so really, we really only need to deal with, the human stuff, which you're talking like a Kabbalist, and I know you can't help it. But most people, they don't accept those things. Most people don't even accept that like what they eat affects how they feel. Like simple stuff or how they
Well, it's new.
speak.
It's science. I mean, we've had years and we've had millennia to research reality, look at how things interact, come up with new hypotheses, prove those things. Don't and it's like we've kind of done a lot of that already, and we've neglected completely the realm of like human sociology, like the human organism. It was almost like left unimportant. Give me your
No,
take.
I get what Seth is saying. I mean, and again, to take it one step deeper Kabbalistically, like, okay, so one thing we should all agree on, again, doesn't matter if you're what side of the political aisle you're on or what your opinions are about anything. One thing we all human beings should be educated about and agreed upon is that we're all connected, not just with each other, with all of nature. All of the cosmos is a single system, and we're in it. And if we don't see how we influence it, it doesn't mean that we don't. All of us are there. There's no isolated piece in reality. Nothing exists in isolation. All of reality is connected. All of the world is connected. And that means also that our inner worlds and outer worlds are connected, meaning what we see in human life, in politics, and even in the weather is also somehow connected to our thoughts, feelings, desires, actions,
Sure, pay
intentions.
attention.
All of it is connected.
It's
That's a
becoming
good
fall
starting
here.
point.
We're leaving the summertime here. It's starting to get cold. The days are getting shorter. Totally feel myself getting more moody. I don't know if it's because of the wars. I don't know if it's because of the storm. I feel like more frustrated. I feel less
Yeah,
inspired.
you talked about the menstrual cycles of women and all that. There's something that my wife keeps bringing up whenever it's the right
Whenever I
time.
talk about that,
No, that she told me that men's like hormonal cycles, I think, are much shorter than women's.
I should also chart all this. I'm here giving
It-
advice about
like
women charting their.
it's like you what we go through like in a 24-hour cycle, hormonally speaking, is they can go through it in like a month, something like terribly different like that. Again, I'm not exactly sure the detailed parameter that I'm talking about. I need to I need to
That's a little
look
more
that up.
difficult to
That's
measure
exactly the
because
point. That's exactly what I'm saying
But
about we understand the biology. Like if you're talking
yeah,
about human biology and maybe how it affects our moods, that level we get. But when you start, you mentioned about connection. Like look at all of the calculations that have to happen.
hmm
Everyone's anticipating and waiting for Israel's retaliation, right? And when's it going to
hmm
happen and all this stuff, right? There was a huge ballistic launch, and so Israel needs to retaliate, right? But what the calculations? I mean, how this affects? You've got all these different players. You've got China, Iran, Lebanon, Ukraine, Russia. They're all involved in this calculation. You know, if you do
yeah.
something to nuclear, how does that affect Iran and Russia's
hmm
relationship with the oil? If you do something with the oil, then China, who takes Iran's oil, is going to be looking for it for somewhere else, right? So there's all kinds of different calculations that
That's a
affect
really
everything.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Through what's happening to there today in terms of the war, even in the Middle East, you see how the whole world is interconnected, interdependent. It's one. It's impossible to not be influenced by that. And you could be a country very far away. You're still influenced by that. If not in a very immediate way, then in a slightly indirect way. But you are affected, or you will be affected, or you're already affected, and you will only feel that later on. But I get what Seth is saying, Chris. I think that, I mean, what he's saying is basically, okay, we know there are all kinds of laws of nature. We're not, even just take the men and women thing, like differences like that, right? We don't really, for the most part, we don't live by that. We ignore these truths
how
and
can we even
these
start to
realities.
deal with the more complicated, nuanced things where I really do disagree with you and we can't get along? Like, or no, not that we can't get along, but I really do disagree with you. Like a lion and a zebra, they're not just going to be bros tomorrow. Like they just have an instinct and they've got a million years of chasing each other.
Yeah.
But when it rains, they both look for shelter. Like that is like that's fundamental. And when there's an
Okay.
earthquake, they both run in the same direction to get out of the
So
way of the
so
earth.
so so here's a perspective on this. Okay, so the question you're asking really is, okay, we don't even agree on things that should be obvious to us because they're not even up for debate. That's just laws of nature. And even there, we don't take these things to heart. We don't live by them, right? So how can we agree on what's unclear?
I,
That's
I
that.
think I think what I kind of discovered this week was that the path to world peace, for example, this might be like a little hack. We don't need to dive right into the most difficult part of the problem. We can just, not just, but we can begin to start to get on the same page about, like when an earthquake comes, everyone is leaving town. Doesn't matter your political affiliation. Like there's a lot of also videos regarding this hurricane about different kind of birds that were walking around town making all these crying noises before the storm came. Like all
Really?
these different behaviors of animals that came before the storm. This may be a hack for humanity is to get on the same page with a lot of the things that we do all share and then start building from there.
Nice.
And when we get to that part that we can't solve, we're already standing on the shared mountain together.
That's good.
And we have so much in common that it will have other tools
It's like
at
the
that.
overview effect. It's like if everyone could just be an astronaut for a minute, go up there,
Yeah.
come back, and then make decisions.
Yeah, or you could just educate people from early on that the universe is one, the earth is one, the everything in reality is connected, and whether we like it or not, that is reality. Now let's start thinking about what's the best way to live in an interdependent system. Oh, guess what? It works the best when the pieces are trying to help each other and support each other, and and not cause damage to each other, because it all comes back throughout the whole ripples through the whole system. So, or you can just take all of them to, to outer space. Yeah, that could be. I would add that to the educational experience, and that will
the
probably
important
be
decision
doable.
makers, right?
Even if we can't bring every 8 billion people physically to space, we can probably pretty soon simulate it with VR and AI in a very
True.
convincing way, and then just
Yeah.
give people that experience. Like, zoom out of the planet for a second. Check this out. It's just one thing, blue marble swimming in vast space, and we're all
Right.
on it. You know. Yeah. Anyway,
do
Seth,
something.
where
Would
did
do
you where do you want us to dig deeper now into?
When it comes to, so Chris brought up a really fascinating point that forget about the news, first of all. Forget about the bullshit news because you're not getting a full story. But if a country is getting, well, let's just stick to Chris's point
Yeah.
that if for what if Iran launches missiles at Israel and now Israel is going to retaliate at Iran, but if Israel bombs Iran, then it screws up Iran's oil, which means China doesn't have oil, which means all other kind of problems, which which sets off because, like we said, like we didn't say, like HaSulam clearly said that we're all like cogwheels in this machine, and one doesn't move without moving all the other ones. So, what I wanted to show by the storm and talking about the way that the earth spins and talking about the saturation point of air and talking about the closeness to the equator, these are all parameters that are fixed because we live in a fixed system. Similarly, if a little mosquito like crawls for a second on my shoulder and flies away, not a problem. But if it starts walking around and it's getting ready to stick its needle in, like bam, you're gonna smack it, right? So like how many, like, okay, you launch one missile at me, I won't retaliate. You launch two missiles at me, maybe I won't retaliate. Like how many times until it's a fixed system, you can't not, that you're going to get a reaction. Like everything, we need to see that everything here has its limits. You can't punch someone in the face like over and over and not expect a reaction. I'm not even talking about necessarily like Israel, Iran, although I'm kind of talking about it because obviously there's so many details in so many directions. So the point isn't, and I hope that you guys will get into some more detailed, nuanced stuff, but my general point is just like the storm. We need to see everything and our world situation and how close we're getting to World War III right now, because everything, if you're close to the equator and the earth spins the way that the earth spins and the water temperature is something, you're going to get a hurricane. That's just what's going to happen. So in the same way, if all of these things are happening, you're going to get a world war. It's not, nobody should be surprised about it. Now, the difference is, except, if you're like Kev out there, or whoever else who is, really into the HARP and weather modification and all that. I'm not talking about who's controlling the weather. Let's say that weather,
The
let's
Jews,
just
obviously, but okay.
suppose, let's suppose for the sake of our podcast that weather isn't being manipulated and that weather is just a natural phenomenon based on temperature and water pressure and air pressure and temperature and spin of the earth.
No,
Let's just
there's no doubt that we're influencing it. Is it happening deliberately, and in ways that are nefarious and like, that, I mean, I don't know, maybe, but even without that, I'm saying put that aside. Clearly, humans are part of the planet, and human activity is also part of the planet, and everything is one system. So clearly, this is also a result of what we do, think, and feel. So I'm saying, even if there is a conspiracy, even if there is some chemical way, ways by which, I'm not that overwhelmed by that. I'm not that impressed by that, because I see the system as us already influential in it anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I think there are much bigger forces than whatever chemical experiments or chemical ways, people are trying to control the weather. Let's say, I think we're already controlling the weather and everything else in much more powerful ways that we just don't even understand.
For instance,
Yeah.
For instance, how we relate to each other as human beings on
okay,
this
hold on.
planet,
I need to
what the
keep
state
like
of the world.
reins on this. Hold on. I need to keep reins on this conversation,
Mhm.
because just to go to our
Mhm.
thoughts and feelings influence the weather and influence the wars.
Okay,
Of
so
course,
so
this
it's
is
either we go,
exactly
we're at a
this
point
is
in our
exactly what the wisdom of Kabbalah says. It's exactly what you're reading about in the Zohar, but we need to take the conversation step by step,
Okay,
because
here's what I see then. Here's what I see, guys. That we're at a point in our discussion where we put a bunch of things now. Seth put a bunch of things on the table basically, and we can kind of pick her out. And I think it's you've
take a
tickled
slow
me.
and steady route.
You've tickled me with Israel and World War and all of that, and we can totally go deep into that if you want. But or you also, or you want to talk about more like, where is this, how human beings are influencing nature and that relationship. I see like two ways we can go. What do you say? Should we ask should we ask our friends on the
No,
chat?
start
Should we?
with we can, but I think that a little nuance around the Israel situation is very helpful, because like the storm, we should be able to see natural forces. We should be able to see shared experiences in this and start to build a correct worldview.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think also a part of the thing here is, I mean, we kind of talked about it before the show, but where it's like how much is humanity kind of willing to tolerate? Is that even a is that I mean, like, we know
In
Floridians,
what way?
they can tolerate. Apparently, they keep going back, but like nature. I don't know if they said it. I think it was you that said it, that mathematically we're reaching the boundaries of how big a hurricane can be. And I don't know how often that happens or how often it's going to happen from now on. But at one point, for example, they'll move away from Florida at one point, or they'll stop building their houses in such a way. At one point, it'll make the human think differently, act differently. Wars, we see that for, also millennia. It's been happening, from the caveman, they'll throw a stone or whatever, and until they get their way. So we see, everyone's trying to get a nuclear weapon, and we see the how terrible that can end up as well. So there's a limit. We see that they'll possibly want to move away from Florida. We just use that as an example. What about moving away from the things that just cause general human pain, which is mainly caused from the way that we treat each other? So at what point are we pushed into changing the way that we act, changing the way that we behave,
I want
not
to read
just
something
whether we
to you.
build a house in Florida, but how
Okay, so
we
I didn't
range ourselves.
validate, this. I didn't check every one of these, but the woman's name is Dr. Casey Means. Uh, so you're asking, what are America, what will we do until we're ready to change? So you said Florida, there's storms. How many years of storms until people won't build there, right? So how about this? 74% of Americans are overweight. Cancer in young adults is up 79% in the last 10 years. 25% of men under 40 have erectile dysfunction. Young adult dementia has increased 3 times since 2012.
What
One
is
in
young
two
adult dementia?
Americans are expected to have cancer in their lifetime. One in
wow,
36 children has autism now.
wow,
Okay.
oh man,
77% of young Americans are ineligible to serve in the military because of obesity or drug abuse. Okay, and there's more. So do people wake up every day, Chris? I mean, this is the challenge
Okay,
to this
okay, okay,
question. Is
okay.
at
I get
what
an idea.
point?
I got an
You
idea.
got it. You got us off. You ready?
I got an idea how I mean, look, we put ourselves into a nice
I'm an
mess,
optimistic person.
and Seth just
Take
piled
us
it
out
up.
of it.
So,
That's your
yeah.
job.
Okay. How about
I
we
just like
read?
drama.
I read you a quote from Kabbalist Baal HaSulam, and in a short yet very deep quote, and I'm not gonna say it's gonna be clear and simple to understand, but it's short. Um, if we start there, if we put that as a kind of an umbrella for everything that's happening, everything that Seth just read, as well as the hurricane, as well as the culminating wars that are becoming a third world war, if we put all of that on the table and we ask, okay, what is going on here? What is happening in the world? Then first we have to understand where is where is this world headed? Where is it coming from? What is its purpose and where it's headed? And that's the realm of Kabbalah, right? So let's start there. Just read that quote and then see where that takes us, okay? So I can show my screen, but I don't know how much that's gonna help. I'm just gonna read that. Can you see something? No, you can't see yet. How about this?
Yeah,
Wait, now
I
it's
see.
blurry. Better?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. So this is from Baal HaSulam. I'm just gonna read it. It's not that long, but we'll explain later. All the souls in the world must unite and merge into one soul, truly one, which emerges out of all the souls, and they truly become one as in the beginning of creation, when only one man was created. You know what? We could even stop here, but the rest of it is going to be less clear for those who are not familiar with Kabbalistic terminology, but let's get the spirit of it. There was only one man created in the beginning of creation, the Kabbalist tells us. And from his zivugim, couplings, these are spiritual actions, he engendered sons, also spiritual actions. And the sons follow in his ways, but essentially we're talking about a kind of multiplication and division that is happening here. He engendered sons, and the sons follow in his ways, making zivugim until this world is made, with 70 nations, and from within them the seed of Israel. At the end of correction, they will merge in one another until all of them will become one man, like Adam Rishon. Okay, this is Kabbalistic text, not easy to understand for someone who doesn't know Kabbalistic texts. I understand that, but let me give a quick. What is he telling us here in simple, dumbed down version? There's one created being. All of us, all people, all the world, all of nature, all the cosmos. It's one collective spiritual entity. That collective spiritual entity was created as one, but it was then shattered and divided and broken down to many different pieces. We are those different pieces, as well as all the other elements of nature. We identify them as very isolated, different things. We don't see the connections. We don't see that they're all one. And that level of perception is called this world. Okay? This world is a world where all the pieces of one thing are scattered. Now, in this world, there is a reality where the human part is divided into many nations. At the spiritual root, there's only 70 of them. If you ask the UN, there's about 200 countries, and they can debate on what's a country and what's not a country. From a spiritual perspective, there's 70 roots. And then there's also something called the seed of Israel, which is something different, something that doesn't come from directly from all of those as one of those 70 roots. That's built into the structure, the spiritual structure of that collective soul that was created. And that is just something that has to do with the process that this collective soul is going through here in this world. But ultimately, all the pieces become one again. All of reality becomes one again. There is no difference again between anything and anyone. And this one creation feels once again as one whole. This time, however, it's conscious. In the beginning of creation, that one created being was unconscious. At the second state of creation, it's shattered to many pieces and they grow conscious. They become independent and conscious and individualistic. And then they reconnect and merge into one again. And this time they feel this conscious wholeness between them. That is all of reality in a nutshell from a Kabbalistic perspective. Now, why are we experiencing hurricanes and wars and disagreements and seeing all of those differing views between us and so forth? What, why, how, what is going
It's like
on?
we're opening the rock, peeking behind the curtain, be like, yeah, we're separated there. Yep, we're separated here. You're going over here. Yeah, that's also not good. It's like we're kind of like looking at the room and how dirty it is.
Right. So if you have this perspective that all of the divisions we see and all of the wars we see and even the turbulences from the natural world, which are pieces of that same, what is the natural world? The still, vegetative, the animate. It's also pieces of this one thing that was created, that we are. The one thing that we all are. All of nature and all of humanity and all people. There's turbulences in this one system. That too is part of this process that ultimately has to end with all of the pieces merging together as one in a beautiful conscious harmony. Okay? If you have that perspective, this is the Kabbalistic perspective. And if you have this kind of perspective, now you can put all of those events in the world and ask yourself, where is this going? Now, do you want to talk about Israel?
Yes.
Okay. So, Israel right now is not just in a war with Iran on 7 fronts for its survival. Israel is in a war of justifying its existence in the world. Israel is being pressured from every direction right now. Geographically speaking, yes, it's those jihadists in from the south and from the north and from all around and from a little bit around that are all trying to strangle this tiny country. But then beyond this geography, you also have the rest of the world looking. And interestingly, the world is extremely divided about Israel. No one's indifferent. The world is very interesting, very interested, very attentive to what's going on here, and very divided about it. Now, if Israel wants to win, let's put it like that, its external enemies, it's in a situation today where it must also defeat its internal enemy, which is its division. It's social division. Now, social division today, social polarization, division, social conflict, whatever you want to call that, is maybe a problem of the entire world today. I will say most of the world, just to be more, kind of give it the benefit of the doubt. But social division is the problem that is becoming very, very critical in all of the Western world, for sure, and definitely in the whole world. It's brewing. Israel today, with all of the attentions, with all of the spotlights on it, and its need to win its wars against its external enemies in order to survive, it has to create this united people, this one united people, defeat its inner enemy of division first in order to be able. It's just impossible otherwise. It's just going it's not going to work. And so, interestingly, the world needs an example of a united society, whether it realizes it or not. And Israel is in a position where it has this opportunity and need for survival to create that kind of unity across society, that ability that we were talking about. Let's find what's common between us first. Let's see where we can rise above those differences. Let's see maybe even how those differences can help us complement each other. That is a process that now needs to happen here. Now, even more interestingly, the kind of attention that Israel gets from the world, and we've talked about it before, but it's worth pointing out if we're bringing up Israel, the kind of attention that Israel gets from the world is absolutely irrational. It's completely disproportionate. It's irrational. It doesn't matter if you're against Israel or in favor of Israel. You have to, we talked about facts and just looking at statistics, looking at numbers, looking at the point, looking at the reality, and just, agreeing with it. Whether you are in favor or against, you cannot deny that there were, in the last 7 years, it's 9 years now, but from 2015 to 2022, there were 140 resolutions condemning Israel in the UN. I don't care that much about the UN, but it's a very telling, right? Because at the same time, in the same amount of time, there has been 68 resolutions on all other countries in the world combined. So how is it possible that the body that is supposed to be dealing with the world's problems is dealing with Israel as the biggest problem, more than double than in its attitude to all of the other countries combined? How does that even make sense? I'm not even talking, my point now is not to say everyone's anti-Semitic. I'm talking about a Kabbalistic.
Because that's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even part of the discussion. That's not, anti-Semitism is just, it's another very important, but it's another symptom. I'm trying to get.
Israel's been the subject of several hundred resolutions. North Korea has faced less than 15. Myanmar, with all of the human rights abuses, a few dozen.
So basically,
South Africa during apartheid.
Because according to
around
nature,
30.
It goes.
They're not.
It goes
doing
on and
they're
on.
Not doing
It
the
goes.
harm that Israel's doing.
Okay. So we're trying to say there are laws. We're in a system. There's a structure. There's a dynamic in reality, and we're not seeing it, or not knowing it, or we were ignoring it. And Kabbalah's benefit is that it, or help here, is that it tries to uncover these laws that we don't see. And so yeah, if you brought an alien to planet Earth and showed him these details, and by the way, you also that alien would ask, "Ooh, that Israel is probably a pretty big country, right? And those Jews living there, they're probably huge in the world.
Probably understand what was going on."
But then if you told the aliens, no, actually, Jews are 0.2% of the world's population, not even 1%. It's not even close to 1%. It's 0.5% of the population. And by the way, all those Jews, 15, 16 million, they're divided almost equally between the U.S. and Israel. So if you look at just the Jews in Israel, that's 0.1%. So the world is terribly focused with 0.1% of its population. What the hell is going on here? If you had 1,000 people representing the world, it would be 999 pointing at 1. What is going on here? This is irrational. This does not make any sense. By the way, there's many other wars happening right now in the world. Look at numbers.
No one knows about those.
No one knows about them even. So we have to start, and this is not happening today or yesterday. This has been happening for a long, long time. Not even decades or centuries. We're talking several thousand years.
If you had those thousands of people, and one of them was causing all those problems, like that one should be drowned out. Like,
yeah, I mean,
what
the
one
alien
person be doing that's so bad. Like, is it because unless that one person is stronger than all the rest of them, what are they doing?
Exactly. So you bring the alien, right? Bring back the alien who's looking
I
at
think
her,
the alien would.
and he
I think
goes
the
like,
alien. You're treating
"Just
the alien
scratch
like
them.
he's.
You don't like them. You don't. You know they're not good for you. These Jews, Israel, whatever. You know, just get rid of them. You know why? You know it's not such big of
We're
a problem.
trying.
They're not that big. You know,
We've been trying.
and yeah, and humanity would go. Anyway, the world. There is a very unique, irrational, disproportionate attention to Israel and to the Jewish people, Israel being the biggest symbol of the Jewish people in the last 80 years, right? So we have to understand that this comes from the structure and dynamic of reality itself. This is what was in that quote from Baal HaSulam, who sees the inner structure of humanity, the spiritual nature of who we are and where we are and what's happening here. There is everything that we see in the world today, including this war in the Middle East, is a projection. It's a projection of what is happening in the collective soul. In the collective soul, there is something called the 70 nations, and there is something called the seed of Israel. Some unique amalgamation of the 70 nations, actually, that became evolved in a certain way, that now it owes the rest of the collective soul something that has to do with our spiritual development. We don't understand that, but that is what is happening right now in the world. Now, I can go on about what's happening inside Israel, because that's even more fascinating, because the Israelis have no idea about all of this. But we have 6 minutes left to the hour, and I maybe that's enough, Israel,
just to
for
tie a
this
couple of points.
episode.
It's interesting because you said there's a disproportionate, right? But then we kind of started the conversation about how something has to happen, right? Some kind of like change. You get the Floridians need to somehow move, right? And if you want to look at it like that, then maybe if the Floridians move and they change the way that they set up their houses and everything, maybe that'll influence how people in Louisiana or Texas, you know, they see kind of like an example. Someone has to start it, someone has to do it. And I didn't really mention that this attention on Israel, it has to force them, like this hurricane forces Floridians, has to force them to make that change. They've got to be the one that makes it. That seed of Israel is not just a seed of Israel, and it's just kind of needs to do its own thing. They also have a purpose. They also have a role. There's a goal.
The world's looking at Israel now, and Israel is in this critical war for its survival. And the one thing that it needs is Israel itself needs to be unified. The division here is horrible, and it to the point that it puts it puts Israel's survival at stake. And so there's an opportunity at the very least for Israel now to do something that reverberates around the entire world, and it has to do specifically with its inner composition. What we learn from the Kabbalistic sources is how that structure called Israel, in reality, it's a structure in the collective soul, how it can radiate things to the rest of the whole body. Now look at nature. All of nature works this way. Organisms aren't built from just nodes, just cells connected. No, there's organs with specific functions, and typically there are very few organs that have control and influence over the whole body. You know, like the brain and inside the brain, a very small part of it that's responsible for so much, right? Or the heart. And so Israel has an important role. It's not by chance that it has a spiritual role that at the moment it's not fulfilling. And it's not by chance that the world, on the one hand, is super attentive to Israel. There's a lot of hatred towards Israel. And on the other hand, why hasn't the world eliminated Jews, or now in its current form, Israel, to this point? If there's such, why? What's going
So
on?
we started the show talking about these fixed laws of nature. And for example, that every year we have these hurricanes that hit Florida because of air pressure and temperature and the spin of the earth and all that stuff. It just means that every year, right in that area, you're going to have these hurricanes that pass through. Similarly, because when we can look at big data now, we can understand these things. It's not a surprise. None of this should be a surprise to us. And if we look at big data over the last 3,000 years, and we look at this group of people, we also see the same patterns. We can see patterns, and we can see the patterns seasonally. We should write down what we're doing and what response we're getting from the world, and what we're doing and what response we're getting from the world. Just like we talked about writing down, for example, a menstrual cycle. Or for me, I can see seasonally how it affects me when we go from summer to fall, how my mood and my energy changes completely. Even like my face feels hot, as it gets cold outside. Like I can notice these things after years of going through them. I start paying attention to them. If we look at the same thing with this country, with these people called Israel, through all these thousands of years, we will also find patterns.
Yep.
And then we can, because we're in a fixed system, and because all of these things move according to fixed laws, we don't need to be surprised about anything. What we can start doing is understanding how to dance with them instead of be.
I want this is gonna this is gonna you tickled me hard with the Israel thing. The fascinating thing, because I think we're talking about this, and we are attributing this unique spiritual function to this. What is it even? Is it a group of people? What is Israel, the Jews? What exactly are we talking about? We're not going to solve all of this in the minute that we don't have left, right? But I do want to say this: even Israelis, and most of them, they have no idea about what we're talking about right now. This should be obvious to everyone. We're talking about something that
Jews are 0.2% of the world's population. Within Israel, it's probably 0.2% of Israel of the Jews.
Exactly.
Who understand this.
Many Israelis today, most of them. Let's say here's how it works. Pretty much, you have a lot of Israelis that are, especially the younger ones, and they're more on the left from the political perspective. They want this country to just be, they call it Sweden in Hebrew. So basically they just, let's just try to have a good life here, and we're okay, we speak Hebrew, but let's just try to be Sweden, And then you have many other Israelis, probably from the other political, from the other side of the political spectrum.
I hear something. Other people talking. Is that from my computer?
No, I don't. We're not hearing it. It's
Okay,
from your
let me see.
computer, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, good now? Okay. But anyway, you have a bunch of people in Israel. Most of them just want, they want to, let's be the startup nation that we are. Let's, improve our high tech. Let's just have a good life, and that's it. And they could be religious or secular, by the way. I'm not talking about that. That's what most people here just want, right? But the reality is that the countries around Israel refuse to see Israel that way, and the Jewish state makes for a big godly problem for so many for all of those populations that surround, so many of the populations that surround Israel. Of course, mostly with those jihadist groups trying to murder them. And so, just because they're Jews. And so basically, Jews live in Israel, live in a very paradoxical state. They just want to be most of them just want to have a good life and just, okay, let's be like the West. Let's be like, we're evolved, we're tech savvy, let's do business, let's have a good time, let's do music festivals, let's just live life. And reality doesn't allow it. It's a very interesting thing. And even then, it's very, very hard for these people to ask spiritual questions, to ask deeper questions. Now, there is some degree of social cohesion in Israel because of religion. Religion still plays an important role in keeping a big portion of the population together, but it's not enough. It's not enough at all to win against this internal division and to actually create a unity that is broad enough and stronger enough. We gotta stop here.
The 0.2% of
They have
the
I'll
0.2%.
just say this: they have the method to create such a unity that is universal, and that's the wisdom of Kabbalah, and that is the ancient set of laws of nature discovered by a group of people from all of humanity that ultimately became what we call Jews. And these working with nature to be a unified society is what this ancient method and wisdom is all about, and it is what the world needs today. But we're still not, it's still not happening, and that group owes it to the world. That spiritual group, let's say, that spiritual part of the system owes it to the rest of the system. So that's
And
where
until
you
they
are.
get it, they're gonna be mad, and they're not
Yeah.
gonna be happy.
Yeah. I know. We went a bit over time, and I'm not even sure how much, how clear was that, especially if people heard it for the first time. But you asked for it, Seth.
Write your comments in the
You
chat
cooked your
here.
own.
If write your thoughts, questions, comments about this in the chat. We check them all the time. This is, we do need to speak about these things. It needs to become clear to all of us the same way that we see from the hurricane that we're living in these fixed laws in a fixed system. We need to understand about everything else in life and then understand where is our choice? Where is the place of free choice? And what can we do there? And what is not part of free choice and what is. So please tell us what you think about this conversation there so we can know how to fine tune what we're doing here. And we'll see you next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Big hug to
You
everybody.
you
Thank you, guys.
wanna you
Do we have
wanna
a
do we have while you figure
acapella?
out the song situation? Let's read one less. Seth, let's read one.
Yeah, go.
The last sentence of that quote from HaSulam again. At the end of correction, all will merge into one another until all of them will become one man, like Adam Arishon. That's what we're all about. That's what Kabbalah is all about. And hopefully, we've managed to communicate some of that. But next week, 2 p.m.
Wait,
Yeah, actually, isn't it a holiday next week? Do we have a song ready? Or I'm just
Yeah, we do. Is there a holiday? don't-
I don't want to mislead anyone. Maybe we won't
like
be
there
here
should be.
next
Sounds
week.
right.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's go to the song and we'll put it in
stay
the chat.
tuned to the YouTube channel, and you'll see if we advertise the podcast happening next week or not, because we don't know at the moment. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, no song?
And go audio.
Yeah? Happening?
Right? Oh, I just saw that. I'm telling you, there's an issue over here. I don't know why
All
I
right,
need to.
check
Here we
this
go.
out.
Check it out. What do you got?
Our theme song.
Ah, here it is. It's coming.
Oh, it's coming? Okay,
It's coming.
okay. I'm
It's
stopping.
coming, guys. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah, man.
Seth, you
All
could say
right.
so
Here we
many more
go.
things until we play that song. I love it that so many friends are still with us. Yeah,
Come
thank you,
on,
friends,
baby.
for bearing with us with these controversial topics and not so easy explanations. Hey, Debbie.
Debbie.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Annie, Gail, Ruth, Patricia, Steve,
Yep.
Rex, Raymond, Dewey. Hey, Dewey. Judith,
Do it.
Anima.
Okay, I can't. It
Anima
just.
de
Yeah,
Vida.
I can't. I can't. I
Lisa.
can't press play. So we're gonna have to. Gonna have to.
We'll just say goodbye to everyone. Seth, cut me off already.
See you next time, everybody.
Bye,
All
everybody.
right. Bye.
Bye bye.